Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. This is part three in my three-part series, or four-part series, um, on Green Label CGC comics and how much are they worth. You're probably wondering, like, if you get that dreaded Green Label, well, what does it do to the price? Um, and as I mentioned in the previous videos, I try to use the rule of thumb that if it's like missing like a small piece that doesn't impact the story, then it is maybe worth about half the value of the blue label version of that same comic. Uh, if it's something like a signature, then I recommend cracking it open. If it's something where it's a little bit more than that, where it's a situation where the comic is not complete, well, then we have to figure out a new value, a new rule of thumb to figure out how much that green label is worth when it's missing something that impacts the story. Okay, this is a very different situation. Like when it doesn't impact the story, probably it doesn't impact it can be worth that half value thing, but if it does impact the story, it can really kill the value. So here's an example. This is Tales to Astonish number 13, which is the first appearance of Groot, who just happens to be one of my favorite characters from Guardians of the Galaxy. I liked him, and I liked Rocket Raccoon as well. I just really liked this character. So I really was excited to get this, and the green label was a way of affording it. Um, so green label, and the reason this is a green label is the centerfold is missing. In Effect's story, it is incomplete. Now, if I wanted, I could, what I could do is take this comic and send it to CGC again. Okay. Now, right now it's a 3.5, which is fairly low grade. But if I sent it to CGC and say, hey, I really want the blue label, what they'll do is they will certify it and they will give it what's called a 0.5 grade, which is terrible. And that would be, what would determine the price based on it being worth a 0.5. Now, personally, I prefer the higher grade than the 0.5, but that would be one way of getting that blue label. Now, the question is, how much is this worth with the green label 3.5 missing a page that impacts the story? Okay, that's pretty major. I mean, if there's more pages missing, probably it would impact even more. But let's figure out how much this is worth based on the impact to the story. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the value of this comic. So if you look at the GPA, I'm going to just make myself a little bit smaller here. You look at this comic on Go Collect, you can get sort of a sense of how much it's worth. So in a 3.5, it would go for around $1,800. So a fairly pricey book. And that's in a blue label. Now, if we look at the census, there's not many that are green labels, which is good. There's two, which is probably mine and some other one. There's 38 in the blue label at a 3.5. Now, the GPA analysis, where you can find out what that comic is worth based on other auction history, shows that the fair market value would be around $1,750, which is a little bit lower than what Go Collect says, but this is based on past auction history. Now, the only auction history of my comic, because there's only two of them, is this one, which just shows you how much I paid. I paid $552. Now, I would actually say that what I paid was probably reasonable based on the condition of the comic. The rule of thumb that I like to do is based on like missing one page that impacts story, is that it's worth about a third of the same graded comic. Now, that is my rule of thumb. I'm not sure if that's actually how you should value it, but it seems to be a fairly good rule of thumb. So basically, a third of 1700 is roughly, it's around 550. So I paid $2 over price. If you look at the 0.5 value, it's actually 675. So I'm sort of within that ballpark of having it with the green label. If I could resubmit it, as I said, and get that blue label, and it would actually increase the price to probably 675. So, is it worth doing? I don't think so, but it's something that you would have to consider. Like, how much is that 0.5 version worth compared to what that green label value would be? And sometimes they're different, where you can, and it could be actually worth more as that blue label. Now, if it's a higher grade, like if it was like a really high grade and it's just missing a page, well, obviously when you make it a blue label, but a 0.5, you've really killed the price. We're not talking a third anymore. We're talking more like, a tenth. A really high graded comic. You can see that this one, a really high grade, goes for 14,000. That's a huge difference in price. So to go to that, 0.5 label would be terrible. Whereas when it's in a low grade already, to go to that 0.5 makes more sense. Okay, so you really got to kind of think about it in terms of what kind of label you want, first of all, on your comic, and what that does to the price of that comic. So I kind of hope this shows you a little bit more insight in terms of what way to go with your comic. Should you go with the 0.5 grade, or should you go with that green label, but maybe potentially a higher grade? If the comic looks really, really nice, maybe going for that higher grade, but a green label might make sense. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy this series that I'm doing. There's one more, and it's a biggie. it's big. So you gotta stay tuned for that last part of this 4-part series, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So stay tuned for that. And please leave a like, comment, and subscription to my channel, and see you in the next video.